Hi, I'm Mike Seeley with Your Loan Genie and author of Demystifying the Loan Process. And today we're going to talk about demystifying the option arm loan, sometimes called the Freedom Loan, also called the NegAm loan. This is a very powerful loan. It's so powerful you can shoot the eye out of an eagle from a mile away, or sadly you can shoot yourself in the foot if used improperly. And that's what we want to talk about, how to use it properly and to understand precisely what the option arm is about, how it can help you, and the things to watch out for. The option arm has a number of features that most people have no clue about. I want to talk about those here briefly. As you can see, we've set up this program so you can see over here on the left different chapters or headings that allow you to review the various features and benefits and how to best use the option arm. What I suggest is that you first go through this entire video, watch it from beginning to end, and then come back and go back to the features that you want to bone up on. Or as you look at a potential option for yourself, how that will affect you. And remembering, do I want the escalation feature? Do I want a 3-year payment penalty? And all of those will become evident after going through this program. Well, as we said we'd talk about, there are various features and basic parts of the option arm that are critical to understand. First and foremost, it's an arm, an adjustable rate mortgage. Secondly, it's an option arm. So you have many options in there. More than just one or two. You have actually a myriad of options, and we'll talk about those. Then we want to talk about the way you price the loan, which is very important to you because there are huge costs or huge rebates that you may or may not be aware of. We'll talk about those. The matrix of pricing it includes things like your prepayment penalty period, the type of index you choose, and also the margin you're going to add to the index, and another important feature. Then we'll talk about recasting, how that minimum payment is determined, also how it's added on each year. And then finally, we'll talk about how to best use it to meet your needs and your goals. And with that, let's get started. If you look here on the graphs that I'm showing you, it'll give you a relationship between a 30-year fixed, 3- and 5-year, and the option arm, where it rates with those.
As you remember from Demystifying the Loan Process at the seminar and on this series, we talked about the building blocks of loans, and that there are two basic building blocks. The first is a fixed loan, and the second is an adjustable loan. And reality is, most loans are a morph of those two. And certainly our option arm also qualifies as a morph of that. Let's go down below here and we'll see how an option arm compares with a 30-year loan. At the top of the graph here you see we have a 30-year fixed loan of $100,000 at 6.5% and paying monthly $632.07. Now below that is our 7-year fixed rate, then going adjustable, and then our 5-year fixed rate, and then going adjustable. Down below that is where the option arm starts. Now it starts there only with its minimum payment, very similar to your credit card. And that minimum payment is generally about half of the 30-year fixed rate. In this case, you see it's $320. And if you look up above, you'll see that the 30-year fixed again is $632. So again, the minimum payment is about one half. Now, the option arm here is also for $100,000, and again, that's its start rate. Remember, the true rate is a blend of an adjustable rate and a margin. Now, the second year, the minimum payment hikes up a little bit. It goes up 7.5%. In this case, you'll see it's $344.03. And that's what happens each year. The minimum payment is raised by 7.5%. Here I'm showing you the increase for the first 5 years. Again, noting that each year your minimum payment goes up by 7.5%. And again, I want to remind you that the true rate you pay on the option arm, or you defer, is a margin added on to an index. So for example, here our first 5 years, you'll see that the first payment is $320, the second year $344, the third year $369, the fourth year $397, and the fifth year $427. And again, those are only minimum payments. Now, a lot of people want to know what happens next, and that's a darn good question. The sixth year minimum and full payment likely will go up. It could go level, and it could go down. But it's based on a 25-year amortization of the current interest rate. But most likely the rate will escalate up considerably, all the way up to perhaps $1,095.27. And that's based on the new 8% rate with a 25-year amortization.
Now, delayed payments is one of the features of the loan. A lot of people originally used to think that was the terrible part about the option arm. That can actually be a benefit, but you need to understand how it works. When you're making a 1% payment, that is generally a minimum payment. And it means if the true rate should have been 7, that means there's about a 6% spread there that you're not paying. And that is delayed, pushed back to the back end of the loan. We call it adding on to the principal. And that can be a benefit in the sense that, well, you're paying 2, 3, 5, 7 years from now today's debt. And what do we find happens during those years? Inflation, making that money 5 years down the road cheaper and less expensive than if you paid it today. So in that sense, it's a benefit. But also remember that you're being added on to your principal later on. So what we talk about is, if you can do something with the difference between your 1% and the true rate you're paying at that moment, that makes it a valuable loan. Let me show you that here.
If you only make the minimum payment, and that's shown here by the blue blocks, you will have deferred interest. And that deferred interest is calculated by looking at the fully amortized payment. For example, in year 1, you should be making a payment of $620. If you only make a $300 minimum payment, then you have $300 each and every month of deferred interest. Again, that adjusts monthly. And if you go on to the fifth year, you'll see a $427 minimum payment will be short $460 for a fully amortized payment. Again, that's added on to the principal balance. The secret to the option arm is being able to do something with the money that's deferred when you make the minimum payment. If you can do something with that money that is greater than the cost of that money, then you have a winner in the option arm.
The other feature of the escalation clause, or the recasting, is an important feature to be aware of. Very few people know about that. In other words, whenever the actual loan balance exceeds the original by 10% or 15%, they call it the 115 rule, then you can recast the loan and start from that point making it a fully amortized rate. In other words, you can't pay the 1% minimum anymore. And I'll show you that here, how that works.
Here's how the early or the pre-5-year recast escalation clause kicks in. If you're making the minimum payment of $320.03, remember you're deferring interest. And the amount that you're deferring is about $300 a month. So add up to $3,600 per year. What happens? Well, as you see at the top there, we add that $3,600 to the $100,000 balance. That would give you a new principal balance of $103,600. Let's say that the second year also you make the minimum payment and the interest rate keeps going up. And at $344, you'd be short almost $400 a month, or a total of $4,000 at the end of the year. And that would be added on to the balance again, giving you a new principal balance at the end of the year of $107,600. Now let's say you go into the third year and you're making the minimum payment. Well, you'd be short by $4,500 for the year, which would bring, adding that to the previous balance, would bring you to a balance of $112,100. Now remember, this is actually added monthly, not yearly, and you have the option each month to change. But if you did it again on year 4, you'd be short another $5,000 and accrue a balance of up to $117,100. Now you see you've hit over 115% of the original balance of $100,000. What happens? A big explosion happens. Actually, be careful because this can happen in 1 month. It's called recast premature. What does that mean? That means when you've hit that balance, they're concerned that you will not be able to handle the increasing principal balance in a timely fashion. So they recast the loan at that moment, at that month, for the remaining years. Now let's just say it went 5 years. Actually, this shows a 4-year example. But if it went 5 years, you'd have a new, and the current rate was 8%, you would have a 25-year amortization rate. You'd be paying $903. That'd be a bit of a jump from what you were paying on the minimum side. Again, $903 based on an 8% interest rate and an amortization period of 25 years. That could be any number of years depending upon when your 115% limit hits. So be wary, watch your bills, and watch your balance. Make sure it does not hit the 115 rule.
When pricing the option arm loan, you go through quite a matrix of choices. One of the main choices is the index you're going to choose. Remember, it's an adjustable rate mortgage. So it has to have an index that you tie the rate to. And there are choices like the LIBOR, Treasury bills, coffee, 11th District, and a few others. But you want to choose one that you feel will best fit your needs. And the best way to determine that is looking at the index now, how it's performed historically, and getting a good feel of how it's going to perform coming up in the next 2 to 4 years.